Okay, this is something we talked about last week, but I'd kind of like to go over it again now that we've had a look at some of the functions and formulas in spreadsheets. So you remember this? This was the sort of grade calculator that I created. Now I want to kind of show you some of the features of this and explain how they work, just to kind of maybe hopefully cement some of the things we talked about this week. So first of all, I want to look at this. This is the homework percentage. Now the way this is working is I'm using round, as you can see, with up to 4 decimal places, and that's important, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. So you can see it's going round G2 over H2. Now what does that mean? That means I'm rounding this value over this value to get this percentage. Well, where does this value come from? This value is the sum of B2 to B11. So to be more clear, it's this range right here. It's from B2 to B11, and it's summing up all of those. So you can see it's equals sum B2 to B11. And this is just a number that I entered because I knew what the total would be. Now the way I get this percentage is by going to Format, Number, and putting it in percent. So if we just go normal, you can see this is what the value actually looks like, and that's where the 4 digits come from. So if I go Format, Number, percent, that's where that value comes from. Now if I change this, if I change the decimal places, you can see that it kind of changes the percentage. So if I undo that by pressing Command Z or Control Z if I run a Mac, you can see this is a more accurate representation. And this is the same thing that I'm doing here. I'm rounding G4 over H4 to 4 decimal places. So that's G4 over H4. Same with my exam. Now this is more complicated. This is the big chain if statement. So I'm going to actually copy this value and put that in this cell, and then I'm going to make this cell much bigger so we can kind of get a good look at what's going on there. So if I resize this and kind of pull that front and center, and then I'm going to make this font much bigger by clicking on here. I'm going to make this let's make it 12-point font. That's a little better. Let's actually make it 14-point font, and then we're going to have to make this a little bit bigger. So let's break down what's going on here. This is essentially just a chain of if statements. So you can kind of see if D2 less than 600, then put an F. Otherwise, do this next if statement. If D2 less than 700, put a D. Otherwise, do this if statement. If D2 less than 800, put a C. Otherwise, this if statement. If D2 less than 900, put a B. Otherwise, put an A. So you can see it kind of walks down the possibilities. You could also do this the other way, where you go if D2 greater than 901, it's an A. Otherwise, do an if statement and walk down the other direction. This is just the way that made the most sense to me. And I'm going to use Command Z or Control Z if I were on a PC to undo all of those changes, both pasting that and resizing these cells to get everything back to the way it was. So that's an if statement. Now one other thing I want to show you is right here, the conditional formatting. Now this is the conditional formatting setup I use to get these different colors. So you see it's just a list of text contains. If text contains an A, change it to this color. If text contains a F, change it to that color. Now I want to show you a good example of using if error. Here I have if error and this statement. Basically I'm rounding the average of the values from B15 to B16. That's not a long range, but still it's these values. Perhaps a better one to look at is here, and this is doing the same thing. If error, put a 0. So basically all of this stuff right here is the value that it's looking at for an error. Otherwise, put a 0. So it's saying if this is an error, put a 0. And what this is doing is it's rounding the average of B2 to B11. Now the only time that would ever be an error is if all of these were empty. Then this becomes a 0. That's where the if error is firing. I can illustrate that by putting error happened, you can see that's where that would come in handy. So again, Control Z or Command Z if you're on a Mac to undo all of those changes and put it back. So you can see this is really useful. This is how you would use, say, sums, if error, if statements, and averages, and round. And here we can see the functions I use to generate sort of the, for between a 0 and a 4.0, it's basically taking the value from D10, that's right here, dividing it by 25, and then multiplying it by 100 to get this 2.96. So I thought that was kind of an interesting overview of how these functions are used in the end. Oh, and you can see I sort of cheated here. I didn't do a sum because it wasn't really necessary to add up more than two things. I'm just adding them directly. It was easier.